Akwaba, welcome to this week's edition of Ghana in Focus with myself, Kwame, Ghanaian writer, broadcaster, journalist, historian, entrepreneur, and podcaster. And in this week's edition of Ghana in Focus, Accra underwater, the flooding that had Accra about a month ago. We're talking about what caused the flood, what should be done, and what happens if nothing is done. So that's the theme for this week's podcast, Accra underwater. So before we get into the show, if you like what you hear, please share to your friends, your family, social media networks. Subscribe to Ghana African Focus on YouTube. We want to get at least 100 subscribers by the end of the year. So subscribe to Ghana African Focus on YouTube. Hit the notification bell, meaning that every time we upload a new podcast, YouTube notify you of that. We're also on Spotify. Look out for Ghana African Focus on Spotify. Hit the follow button, meaning that every time we upload a new podcast, Spotify will notify you of that. All right, and if you want to donate to the show to help us to continue bringing some great content from the African continent and from Ghana, then you can donate as little as $3 a month. You can do that either as a one-off payment or as a monthly subscription. So if you want to donate to the show, I will leave you the link as to how you can donate in the footnotes. All right, so before we get into the show, talking about Accra underwater, just a couple of tidbits. So, the biopic of Michael Jackson called Michael, that was chastised by the white media, is now officially the most successful biopic in history. It has surpassed the $1 billion mark, making the most successful biopic in history, overtaking Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. That took 900 million at the box office. Michael has been released since April 25th, so it's about exactly 3 months old. And Michael has taken a colossal $1 billion at the box market. So that is shame to all those so-called white media pundits and the white media so-called review specialists who basically slated Michael Jackson's biopic because they thought it took out things that should have been there, like the so-called rape allegations or child allegations, and also, that it was like a whitewash of what Michael Jackson was really about. So they didn't rate the film, but that shows the power of Michael Jackson and his fan base in that they're not going to allow the media to destroy the legacy of the greatest entertainer of all time, and that will ever be seen in history of the world. And so Michael Jackson's fans have come out in force, and that has led to Michael being the biggest selling biopic in history. $1 billion made in box office and counting. So that shows you the power that people have when they don't listen to the media who, had negative things to say about the Michael Jackson biopic. And as you know, last week was the World Cup final. Argentina lost to Spain, and I'm very happy Argentina lost. We saw the ugly things after the final whistle. Argentina, fighting with Spanish players and officials because they couldn't take the defeat. And I'm happy that Argentina lost. And the reason why I'm happy that Argentina lost is that, believe it or not, Argentina had African population of around about 40% in the 1800s. But by 1900, that population was dwindled to 1%. Why? Because the president of Argentina at the time made a systemic policy to eliminate African people from Argentina. Yeah, this was done through disease, famine, allowing black men to go on the front line when Argentina had the civil war with Spain, and many black men or Africans died fighting for Argentina. So that reduced the black population, particularly the black male population, and the females that were left either had to become lesbians or marry white men. Hence, if they married white men, which most of them did, then obviously they will produce mixed babies who will then marry white and so the black is erased out. To the extent that today, Argentina has virtually no black people. And this is why in the football team, you don't see any Africans in the football team. Other South American countries, Uruguay, Colombia, Brazil, Peru, Venezuela, all have black players. But Argentina had none. And now you know why. Because there's a policy of elimination of the black African population of Argentina. Yeah, this is why the former Argentine president, Carlos Menem, said, and I quote, "We don't have any blacks in Argentina. That is a Brazilian problem." Yeah, showing you how Argentina systematically eliminated black people from their society. So I'm very happy that Argentina lost. And when you saw Messi crying, that shows how much it hurt them losing their crown to Spain. So I got no sympathy for Argentina because they're wicked people, particularly what they've done to black people. All right, so let's get into the podcast proper. Why Accra flooded? Accra underwater. So we all saw the pictures on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok about the how Accra, parts of Accra, literally submerged underwater. Yeah. And we're going to tell you why it happened, what can be done, what should be done, and what's going to happen if nothing is done. So every season, rainy season, the same images appear in Accra, particularly Accra, but it's also flooding in Tama, Kumasi, and Cape Coast. But the main damage was done in Accra. So you see submerged roads, stranded commuters, destroyed homes, and families wading through their own brown water that should have never been there in the first place. However, this flood has got nothing to do with climate change. I refute any suggestion, and this podcast will prove it, that this flood was caused by climate change. Nothing at all to do with that. It's about the real, immediate, man-made causes of Accra's flooding, which includes the failure of planning, governance, enforcement, and infrastructure. Yeah? So, if nothing changes, like I mentioned, Accra will face partial submergence, meaning that a large chunk of Accra will basically be underwater. Yeah? And I come to those places in a minute. So this is not Hollywood, but through a slow, grinding collapse of its drainage system, its wetlands, and its habitability. If not careful, Accra, large parts of Accra, will not be inhabitable, or will not be habitable, rather. So, let's get into it. Let's start. So, many of you don't know how Accra was set up to fail. Now, check this. The flooding in Accra is not new. It is actually baked into the city's design. Now, check this right. Now, during the colonial era, Accra drainage system was built for a small coastal town of fewer than 100 people. Yeah? So the drainage system that you see in Accra was basically designed for 100,000 people. It was never designed to support a modern metropolis of over 5 million people. Yeah? Post-independence urban sprawl. So after political independence, Accra rapidly expanded, but horizontally, not vertically. What that means is that new neighborhoods emerged faster than plans could regulate them. Yeah. So because opportunities became prevalent in Accra, most people left the hinterland, the rural areas, and migrated to Accra. Yeah. And that's a big issue, even today, the rapid urbanization of Accra, particularly over the last 30 to 40 years. And so natural drainage paths, because of this rapid urbanization, planners could not regulate them. So this has caused natural drainage paths were paved over, wetlands were reclaimed, and floodplains became residential zones. Yeah. Water does not negotiate. So when you block its path, it finds another, usually through people's homes, shops, and roads. Now, another reason why Accra is flooding and flooded recently is due to wetland destruction. So wetlands in areas like Sakumo, Densu Delta, and parts of the Odo Basin acted as natural sponges. Yeah. So these wetlands, yeah, provided, solace from the rain. Yeah. However, today, many of these safety mechanisms, yeah, are filled with trash built on, i.e., kiosks, containers, and what have you, or polluted beyond fiction. Again, another issue is building on waterways. Yeah. And this is the fault of the Accra Metropolitan Authority. So, because of lack of planning and this indisciplining Ghanaians, and basically everyone does what they like because the laws are enforced, entire communities sit directly on natural waterways. So some homes in Accra are literally constructed over the gutters. So this is not climate change, beloved. This is urban malpractice. And you wonder why when it rains, it can't go through these passages because people have blocked the passages by building homes and choking the gutters. So that's some of the reasons how Accra was set to fail, which has culminated in the flooding. Now let's get deep into this by analyzing some of the real causes of Accra's flooding. Yeah, let's break it down. So number one, urban planning failure, as we hinted about earlier on. Accra's growth has been market-driven, not plan-driven. Developers build first and associations later. Assemblies, and this is the fault of Accra, particularly the Accra Metropolitan Authority, they approve permits without assessment. You can't do that in the UK, US, Canada, any developed country. Even Kagame's Rwanda. And I have my misgivings about Kagame, how he's ruled that country, but in Kagame, the law works. You cannot, you as a real estate developer, you can't build a real estate component in Rwanda without the permits, without the right paperwork, yeah, and also without the right hydrological assessment on that land that you bought to build property. You can't do that in Kigali, in Rwanda, or in the Western world. But in Ghana, yeah, because we don't enforce our laws, yeah, this is a result of urban planning failure, whereby you've got these settlements built on waterways. For example, you got if you know Accra, there's something called the Ramsar site, which is basically a waterway passage. Now on this Ramsar site, there are many illegal structures that have been built on this site with, I may add, the knowledge of the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. They've allowed this illegal structures to take place because the law is not enforced and Ghanaians are undisciplined. Now, another major cause of the flooding is our lack of a waste management system. Yeah? So generally waste, particularly plastic waste, is a silent killer of Accra's drainage system. Gutters are choked, beloved. Yeah? So these gutters that were built in the colonial era were not covered by the colonists when they left, and also not covered by successive governments, are just lying in the open. Yeah? And the drains that come to mind, there's three big ones in Accra. There's the Odo drain, yeah, or gutter. There's also the massive gutter at Aladro Caprice. Yeah. There's also a large gutter at the Odo, right? So because of indiscipline, Ghanaians put their rubbish, right? They put their rubbish into the gutter. And when it rains, it clogs. And when it clogs, it blocks the flow of water in the gutters. That causes downstream flooding miles away. So it won't flood necessarily, Dodo, right? It will flood other areas. So as we saw, but even with the gutters, we saw the big gutter at Alajo flood. So that area, Alajo, Caprice, going on to, parts of Circle, all flooded because the massive gutter at Alajo Caprice flooded because of the gutters were filled with rubbish. Yeah. So unless Ghana has a proper systemic waste management system, particularly with Accra is concerned, we're gonna get serious problems. If you take a city like, an African city like Abidjan, next door to Ghana, or Abuja in Nigeria, various cities have waste management systems that every day it is somebody's job to clean the city of Abuja, clean the city of Abidjan. You go to Abidjan, right, in Ivory Coast, next door to us in Ghana, or you go to Abuja in Nigeria, 2 doors away from us, right? These cities are clean, not dirty, because there's a waste management system that is working. In Accra, there are companies that have been assigned, like Zoomland, to collect the rubbish. But Accra is a huge city, yeah, and one company cannot do it alone. So one company has been designed or has been contracted to clean the whole city, and that's virtually impossible. So if you get to areas, particularly in the central business district of Accra, Tudu, Accra Central, Mokola, there is masses and masses of rubbish that are just literally on the road, can't collect. Why? Because we lack, or Accra lacks, a proper waste management system. So that is a big cause of the flooding in Accra. A big cause of the flooding also is undersized and obsolete drainage infrastructure. Now, as we mentioned earlier on, most of Accra's drains were built decades ago. This is when Ghana was called the Gold Coast. Yeah. And so there's been despite the promises by, governments after Nkrumah, there's been no improvement to the drainage infrastructure and the drainage system that operates in Accra. So because we are using, you could say 18th century or 19th century drainage infrastructure for 21st century city, yeah, or 21st century population, that drainage system could not handle today's volumes. Even moderate rainfall overwhelms the drainage system that we have in Accra. Yeah. Also, as I entered that earlier on, illegal construction and weak enforcement of the law is a huge issue in Accra. People do what they want in Ghana, let alone Accra, right? So if people are politically exposed and they know big men, and then they use their political allegiance to build a whole estate on a water area, yeah, a passage area, because that person is politically exposed and is a big man in some party, that person will get away with building an estate, a whole estate on the waterway. Yeah. And the assemblies should know better, can't do nothing because this big man knows political hierarchy in Ghana, in Accra. Yeah. And so because of this, these illegal structures remain, and when it rains, we know what happens. And because of weak governments, assemblies are hesitant to demolish these buildings on waterways because of the backlash they'll face, particularly by people who know big men, or the big men who are politically exposed to government and other people. Yeah. Again, another reason for the flooding, again, I hinted at this, is the Odo Basin. Now, the Odo River is Accra's main drainage artery. It is choked, beloved. So this main passage, right, is choked. As I mentioned, it's choked, beloved, choked, right, with feces, with waste and encroachment. So, given this, when the Odo fails, Accra is going to obviously flood. And we saw the other day, June 30th, yeah, just about a month ago, we saw what happened with the Odo River when it just bursted banks, and that flooded large parts of the city, including Adabraka, which is not far from the Odo, Circle, Nkrumah Circle, not far from the Odo, Alajo, Caprice, not far from the Odo. Yeah? And so the situation of the Odo Basin is something that needs to be tackled urgently. And we know that there was meant to be a project under the NPP that was meant to address this issue of the Odo Basin. And also, we know that under Mahama 1.0, you know, a contract was given to his brother, Ibrahim Mahama, to dredge the Odo River. Did that work? Obviously not. Now, we move on now to the consequences of inaction. Yeah, because this is very, very serious, because if government does not take active steps, and we mean active steps, to solve once and for all this perennial issue of flooding in Accra and the people of Accra are going to miss some serious, serious, serious consequences. So there are obviously the human consequences. And they've been seen already. Families displaced, homes destroyed, children missing school, increased disease like cholera, typhoid, dysentery, malaria. Yeah. And also the psychological stress that goes with it from displacement. These are consequences that has happened already. But if nothing's been done, it will get even worse. 2, economic consequences. Flooding acts, believe it or not, as a development tax, because businesses lose inventory, as we saw. Transport corridors shut down, as we saw, with large, you know, even in the so-called affluent bits. I saw a video on TikTok of a minibus driver that we call Chocho in Accra trying to go through the airport area, the main road from the airport to East Legon. That wasn't part of that was entirely flooded, right? And the driver could not do that because if he had gone any further, that car would have been probably submerged underwater. Yeah. So transport corridors shut down. That creates economic consequences. Also, because people can't get to work because of the flooding, productivity collapses. Yeah. And informal workers, which is the backbone of, you could say, the bottom tier of the Ghanaian economy, lose their income. Yeah. And also, when households flood, yeah, the cost of repairs, particularly if not insured, has a massive drain on household savings. So essentially, Accra loses tens of millions of cities every time it rains, and more importantly, every time it floods. So that cost of flood that we saw on June 30th translated into tens of millions of Ghana cities lost because the transport corridor shut down, because of productivity, because of the informal workers not being able to come to Accra to work. And add to that, household repair damaged properties and businesses also. This ties in with infrastructure consequences. So flooding accelerates road deterioration, as we saw with Nkrumah Circle, bridge weakening, drainage collapse, and erosion of foundations. So there was serious damage, yeah, that occurred when the flooding happened. In Nkrumah Circle, parts of it was basically submerged. A lot of the roads, particularly out of Accra, particularly going to Malam, Adoko, Kaneshing, part of Spintex were damaged because of the rain. Yeah, and this causes economic toll on the country because the way that Ghana designs the roads is not flood proof. We don't dig under, like 12 feet under, and we don't have a proper drain system whereby when it rains, the water can go on the drain system under the ground. Yeah, like having, in the Western places like Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa. Yeah. So our roads in Ghana, the way we're constructed, is a huge issue. And because of this, Accra is slowly being eaten from below. And this is what the authorities and the government are not really looking their eyes on at the moment, because Accra is slowly being eaten from below. Now, we move on to what happens if nothing changes. So this is a part where most commentators have not discussed, but I'm going to address it because it's the truth, and people need to know the truth. What happens if nothing changes? Like I said before at the beginning, Accra will literally sink beneath the ocean if nothing's not done. Yeah, I don't mean today. It will slowly sink because when it's dry season, we all sleep and nothing's done to put drain systems and just the issue. And if it happens that way, give it 5-10 years. What you saw on June 30th, right, is nothing compared to what will happen if nothing's done. Like I said, Accra will literally submerge underwater. Parts of Accra, large parts of Accra. And so what I mean by that is that Accra will not suddenly sink beneath the ocean, but it will experience a slow, irreversible form of submergence, where you get areas like Caprice, Alajo, Spintex, Airport, Weja, Malam, Bawe will submerge underwater. And so, permanent waterlogging zones. So, like I mentioned, areas like Odona, Alajo, Adebraka, Weja, parts of Spintex will become permanently waterlogged during rainy seasons. And if you live in those areas, I'd be worried. Yeah. I know that, if you're a Ghanaian or if you are a non-Ghanaian who wants to come to Ghana and live in Ghana, if you want to buy a property, right, I would urge, based on the thing that happened, right, I would urge you avoid these areas: Odona, Alajo, Kaneshin, Adebraka, Weja, Spintex Road, even East Legon. Parts of East Legon into an affluent area. Parts that flooded. Yeah, because low lying. And there's no proper systems in that area also. Even Jolu, which is a middle upper class area. Large parts that flooded. Yeah. So you got to be very careful, Ghanaians, Africans who want to live in Ghana, as to where you will live. Yeah, because a lot of areas in Accra were permanently waterlogged. Yeah. And you got to be careful also where you buy your land at this point. Now, also, consequences include loss of wetlands, yeah, and loss of drainage systems. So once the wetlands are gone, there is no natural buffer, yeah. The waste will accumulate faster, and it can be drained. Sorry, yeah. So this is a big danger if nothing is done. Collapse of the Odo Basin, as you mentioned, the Odo Basin is the gateway to Accra. And if nothing is done to clean it up, right, the entire system will collapse. Because the basin, that Odo Basin, is the main artery into Accra. So if that fails, everything fails. And this is why we saw the flooding in those areas which are adjacent to the Odo, like Nkrumah Circle, like Adebraka, like Alajo, like Caprice. These are adjacent to the Odo Basin. Yeah. So if Ghana or if Accra Metropolitan Authority, in conjunction with the government of Ghana, does not do anything, then it's game over for parts of Accra. Again, an economic migration out of Accra. So people will relocate. Accra will be inhabitable if nothing is done. A lot of areas will become inhabitable. So that will lead to people moving to higher ground, move to peri-urban areas like possibly like Tema, or outside even Accra, and to other regions like Eastern region, like Ashanti region, etc. So Accra's dominance economically will weaken, yeah? And Accra, you could say, is the economic heartbeat of Ghana. And so if nothing is done, yeah, that could destroy not Accra, but also a large chunk of Ghana's economy. Because a lot of the big companies are based in Accra. A lot of the economic activity is based in Accra. The stock market is based in Accra. All the big banks based in Accra. Yeah? So if nothing is done and Accra becomes inhabitable, Accra will face serious economic consequences that will also impact Ghana's economy as well. And so, we move into solutions. What can be done to permanently rid Accra of flooding? I'll give you some solutions that I think will work. First one is the hydrological redesign. That's more of a technical term, but what it literally means is that Accra's drainage system must be rebuilt for modern rainfall patterns. What this means is large culverts, deeper channels, like I mentioned, but ours need to be deeper, like 12 feet under the ground, not 1 foot or 2 foot. Redesign of the main artery into Accra, i.e. the Ado Basin. That needs to be redesigned and re-architected. Yeah. And there also needs to be flood retention ponds that retain the water when it rains. Again, as a solution, we need to protect wetlands and also restore those that have been damaged. So we need to stop encroachment, and that means the law needs to be enforced. We need to restore what can be restored, because wetlands are cheaper than concrete. So if we allow building on the run of the site, not demolish it, right, this is what could happen. So we've got to protect and restore the wetlands by demolishing illegal settlements on these sites. Again, another solution. There needs to be a massive waste management overhaul. Yeah, ban certain plastics. Community sanitation needs to mobilization, upstream waste control, and also we need to incorporate modern waste collection systems like recycling. Enforcement without fear, like I mentioned. Illegal structures and waterways must be removed by any means necessary. Election, no election, vote, no votes. This is saving Accra and the country, not about elections, right? So we've got to use the law to destroy illegal structures. And also we need to dredge, yeah, occasionally, not a reaction. So we need to dredge. So I told you earlier about the Adult River dredging. That needs to be done basically every quarter. Not just once, as a reaction when it rains. No, it's got to be done every quarter. Yeah? Because if it's not done every quarter, the higher probability is that it will, Ghanaians will be indisciplined and they'll chuck rubbish into the Ado, basin, and that will choke up again. And when it chokes up, we all know what happens. So the dredging must be scheduled, continuous, and professional monitored. And lastly, Accra needs urban planning reform. So what that means is like zoning enforcement. So like in London, you've got different zones, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, etc. We need the same system in Accra, yeah, zoning enforcement. We also need hydrological mapping. We also need a reappraisal and a reform on how building permits are issued. Because the way how they're issued to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, right, is part of the reason of the flooding. And also, we got to, people need to face real penalties for encroachment. Not just 100 cedi fine or 1,000 cedi fine. There's got to be imprisonment, right? Or, fines of about 1 million cedis to serve as a deterrent for encroaching on land and building on waterways. And also, a very, very key thing on this is public education. Unfortunately, Ghanaians are very indisciplined people, so to say, but we are very disciplined people. So flooding is not a government problem, it's a collective problem. Communities, particularly those like poor communities in particular, must understand how their waste disposal affects drainage. And so in closing, what happened in Accra the other day is potentially a wake-up call or a warning as to what could happen if nothing is done to solve the issue of flooding. Now, flooding is not just avoidable, it's not inevitable, it is a lot of choices, both political, economic, and social. Accra can be saved, but only if Ghana treats flooding as a national development threat, not as a seasonal inconvenience. The rains will come again. Yes, it's raining right now, not at its peak, but the dry season will come and we all go to bed. But hear what? The rains will come again. The question is, will Accra be ready? Or whether the city will continue to slow slide into inhabitability and into total destruction. Thank you for listening to this special edition of Ghana in Focus with myself, Kwame, Ghanaian writer, broadcaster, journalist, entrepreneur. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to Ghana African Focus on YouTube, hit the notification bell, subscribe to Ghana African Focus on Spotify. So for myself, Kwame, and from all the crew here on Ghana in Focus, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in the next edition of Ghana in Focus.